So we are watching another History March video. This one is called Why Did Russia Sell Alaska to America? Now if I remember correctly, I believe this happened after the Crimean War? If I remember correctly, I'm thinking about the Epic History video about the history of Russia. I'm pretty sure that's where I remember it from. They sold it to America after the Crimean War. And I don't remember specifically why, I just remember them doing that. I guess just they didn't have interest in it? I don't know, let's find out the specifics, shall we? From History Matters. Did I say March? I'm so sorry, why do I keep thinking History March? It's Matters. Apologies.
1967, Alaska was transferred from the ownership and dominion of the Russian Empire to the United States of America. It was sold for the princely sum of $7.2 million, and for most it's just a footnote in history. A question that should be asked is, why did Russia decide to sell its overseas colony? Furthermore, why did it sell it to the United States and why not, say, Britain or some other colonial power? So the primary reason for the sale of Alaska was Russia's defeat in the Crimean War. The war had done several things. The first was that it had largely bankrupted Russia, which was struggling to repay the debts it had racked up in order to fight the war. The second was that the victories of the Royal Navy over the modernising Russian Navy had made it clear that Russia had a long way to go before it could challenge Britain at sea. As such, it was realised by the Russian leadership that should another war break out, there was little to stop Britain from simply conquering the territory via Canada. So what type of territory was Alaska? For a start, it wasn't called Alaska at the time, but simply Russian America. And for the Russian Empire, it provided several things. First of all was the prestige that came with owning an overseas territory. As for its economic benefits, Alaska was a much more mixed bag, which combined with the cost to protect it, you can see why the sale was seen as necessary. Incidentally, the sale of Russian America was broached by Emperor Alexander II's brother, the Grand Duke Constantine, who wanted to strengthen and liberalise the empire in the wake of the defeat in the Crimean War. It didn't take much to convince the emperor to agree to the sale, but now the question was, to whom? Well, Britain was an obvious contender, given that its North American lands were already...
Alright, so that's some cool pragmatic reasoning, you know, the cost of defending it being on another continent, you know, wanting to unify Russia, at least in terms of after rallying it in terms of after the Crimean War, so yeah, that makes sense, I think.
Already attached to Russian America, and they already had the right to navigate its waters and trade with the colony. So why didn't they sell to Britain? Well, Russia and Britain were imperial rivals, and to give Britain a large coastline so close to Russia was potentially dangerous. Also, Britain wasn't interested, since Canada is already huge and Britain had enough access to the Pacific Ocean. Thus, the United States of America was really the only likely candidate for the purchase. Russia had approached the US in the early 1860s concerning the purchase, but they were undergoing this little-known event called the American Civil War, and so were a bit busy. After the war was settled and the US had to deal with the issues of Reconstruction, the purchase of Alaska was seen as a useful distraction. The Russian Empire was also keen to keep up the ongoing good relations with the Americans, because as an ally they would be useful. It was agreed in March 1867 between the governments of the US and Russia that Alaska would be bought, but how did they come up with the price? Well, Russia had sent a team of surveyors to look for things like natural resources and to see how good life in Alaska was. And it was determined that Alaska was worth about $10 million. However, the surveyors argued that Alaska shouldn't be sold at all and that the governance of it simply be reformed. The emperor ignored this and both sides negotiated until the sum of $7.2 million was agreed. In October 1867 it was transferred to America, and Russia's attention would thereafter be focused to the south and to the west. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you.
That makes sense. The selling, at least the selling aspect of it, I think was interesting. Obviously, Britain didn't want it, but also that they were a huge contender, so preventing them getting any closer. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and just America seemed like probably the safest bet, you know what I mean? So, yeah, overall, like, that was just super interesting. I like how he gets to the specifics and how quickly he explained that. Overall, another great video.